Welcome, everybody. Today's Joy of Gratitude is sponsored as a merit for a Refuah Shlema, a complete recovery for Yehuda Shalom ben Chayracha. So I'd actually like to share a rather deep and in some way difficult idea today. And we have this week's Torah reading. The parsha for this week is Chukas, and it starts with the laws of the Parah Aduma, the red heifer. And what would happen is if a person became spiritually or ritually impure through contact with the dead, in order to purify this person, the Torah tells us that a red heifer would be found. The specific rules of a red heifer: it has to be completely red, or maybe a sort of a reddish brown. The ashes, the heifer is the cow is shechted, it is slaughtered, it is then burnt, and the ashes are mixed with some water and they're sprinkled on the person, and in that way the person becomes pure again. Now, the Gemara, the Talmud, based on a verse in Kohelet, learns out that Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, who was the wisest man in history, who understood everything there was to understand, there was one thing that he said he didn't understand, and that is the Parah Aduma, this particular rule of the red heifer. Now, the Parah Aduma is called a chok, which it's a difficult word to translate. What's a chok? A chok is essentially a mitzvah that has some spiritual reason. God has a reason when he told us to do this particular commandment, but we don't know it. We don't understand it. So you could say that the reason why King Solomon did not understand this law, this particular mitzvah, was because it's a chok. But there's a problem. There are many chokim. There are many choks in the Torah. One example is keeping kosher. That's also essentially a chok. It's not something that we can really understand. You know, why can't I mix meat and milk together? I can come up with some sort of ideas, but to really understand it, it's not something that I would have made up myself or worked out myself if I was coming up with a system of laws. Maybe don't steal, don't kill. These are things I would be able to understand myself. But eating kosher is definitely a chok. It's something that's difficult to understand. And yet, all of those other chukim, all of these other non-explained mitzvahs, King Solomon understood them. With his deep, intense wisdom, he was able to delve down into the spiritual meaning of each one of them. But there was one that he couldn't. And the question is, why is Parah Aduma different? Why is this red heifer different from all these other mitzvahs that he was not able to fathom the deeper understanding of it? And the answer is that even if he was able to understand the deep concept of purification of spiritual impurities and how the ashes of this particular cow achieve that, there is a major problem with the laws of the Parah Aduma that creates a massive contradiction. And that is that the person who burns the heifer and the one who gathers the ashes and the one who carries or touches the mixture of ashes and water, they become ritually impure. So essentially we have a paradox. These ashes, they purify the impure, but they make the pure impure. They help the person who's currently impure to become pure, but people who are involved with the process, who themselves are already ritually pure, this makes them impure, and they therefore have to themselves go through some form of purification process. This was the difficulty that Shlomo HaMelech, that King Solomon had. He could possibly explain the purification process, why it works on a deep spiritual level, but this contradiction seems to cause problems with any explanation you come up with, because if it works here, why does it work in the opposite way in this situation? Our sages tell us that the laws of Parah Aduma were actually taught to us even before we received the Torah. Soon after crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites arrived in a place called Marah, which means bitter. And this place, Marah, was an oasis in the desert. But although there was a spring of water, the water was bitter and the Israelites couldn't drink it, and they complained. Hashem told Moshe to take a tree and cast this tree into the water. He did so, and the water became sweet. Now, this also seems paradoxical if you think about it. If you want to make something sweet, you put in something sweet, right? You put in sugar, you put in honey. If this water had a problem with it, that it was bitter, you should be adding sweet things. And yet here, by throwing in a piece of wood, which is itself at best tasteless and probably bitter itself, paradoxically, this tree made the water sweet. And therefore, it's the perfect place to learn the laws of the Paraduma, because they have similar contradictory aspects to them. And here's the deep idea. Perhaps Hashem was teaching us something vitally important with this incident and these laws. Sometimes things appear bitter, but it may well be that the bitterness itself will provide us with some form of sweetness. We may find ourselves, through no fault of our own, in a situation that is dragging us down into spiritual impurity, but it may well be that that incident itself is what will help us set a path to reach purification. And we actually have examples of this in the workings of our own body. Physical pain, let's take that as an example. This is viewed as being terrible. You ask everybody, pain, terrible, I'll do anything to get out of it. But there are some people who, for whatever reason, don't suffer from pain. I have a patient who has no pain sensitivity in his eyes. As a child, something went into his eye, and without going into any details, because it's rather gruesome, this child is very, very lucky to still be able to see in that eye, because whereas most of us, if something was to go in our eyes, we'd immediately feel pain, and that would warn us that something was going wrong, and that pain itself would help us to deal with the situation, solve the problem, help us go and seek help to solve the problem. This particular child didn't know that there was a problem, and therefore didn't complain, and his parents didn't seek help. I know somebody with almost no pain sensitivity, and he constantly bumps into things, he cuts himself, the cuts get infected, and he doesn't realize. I know someone, because of uncontrolled diabetes, he's lost sensitivity in his feet. He can get cuts and not realize that they are turning into ulcers. He has to have his feet checked every single week to ensure that they're okay. That's one example. I'll give you another example. You know, if you hurt yourself, if we hurt ourselves, we generally will get a swelling. People think the swelling is bad. And yes, if the swelling gets out of hand, it can be damaging. But what's actually going on is a healing process. The blood vessels are expanding. It's called vasodilation. And why are they doing that? To allow the white blood cells to leak out, because the white blood cells fight infection and they try and help the repair process. So the swelling is essentially plasma and white blood cells flooding the area to help us. We get confused that the problem is the swelling, when the swelling is the body self-healing. Just two examples, and there are many. So our mission for this week is a difficult one. And I'm not running away from the fact that it is difficult. But if we can internalize this message, that there are some things that from our human perspective, we cannot understand, things that look as if they are difficult, as if they are setbacks, but the chances are that they are there to help us in some way, that they are there for our good. Our mission is to look at these difficulties that we all experience in our lives, and thank Hashem for them. Yeah, thank Hashem for the pain and thank Hashem for all of the difficulties. And of course, we can also pray that we will understand and appreciate the good in them very soon, that we can realize why this is good and see the good quickly. But even if we can't yet see that good, we have to learn to really appreciate these things. Perhaps there's a certain aspect of faith there, but doing so can actually change the pain itself. Living through that pain can change it to a positive experience if we're able to do this. And I know people, I mean, I'm nowhere near this level, but I know people who are living with pain on a daily basis, and I've seen their faith, and they live on this level. This is the level they live on. I know people who are disabled in a very severe way. In fact, I'm looking forward to spending some time on Shabbos with somebody who physically is very disabled. He is one of the happiest, appreciative, grateful people that I've ever met. I can't say his name, but he does watch this, so hi. And I learn a tremendous amount just by watching him and how he deals with his particular disabilities and the joy that he gets despite them, or possibly because of them. I don't know, I'm not on the level. But that is our mission in every aspect of difficulty that we have. I wish all of us a tremendous amount of hatzlacha, of luck and support in achieving this sort of outlook. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.